First, flip canceling. This is the tech that originally gave me the idea for this video in the first place. Many times you'll hit a rock or otherwise and end up in this situation. Generally, people will panic because they don't know what to do, and will slam on the brakes, keep going at full speed, or turn the wrong way. However, there's a simple way to negate it. Flip canceling. To simplify it as much as possible, you turn in the direction of the wheels still on the ground. If you do it too hard, you might lift the other wheels off the ground, so you'll have to do it again back in the other direction. To avoid it, you just need to turn just hard enough to drag yourself back to the ground. If you want an idea why it works this way, it's because what's flipping you is the momentum going upwards. I want you to imagine there are circles in the middle of your wheels parallel with the ground. If you turn left, then the left circle is being used, and vice versa. Now, what if one set of wheels is off the ground? Well, if you turn in the direction of the wheels in the air, then you're turning away from the ground and adding more upwards momentum, causing a flip. But if you turn in the direction of the wheels on the ground, then you're pulling yourself back to the ground, or applying downwards momentum. So in short, turn partial strength into the wheels on the ground, and it'll cancel a flip. Even if that would turn you away from the direction you're trying to go, you still need to correct the flip, or else you'll just, well, flip. You'll be using this a lot, so you need to get used to using it instinctually. Also, if you become airborne and one front wheel is about to hit the ground before the others, turn in that direction and it'll usually soften the impact. Next, gear shifting. The default controls have it so that the car will automatically switch between drive and reverse depending on what triggers you're holding, but usually that requires you to be nearly or fully at a stop, and sometimes you don't have time for that. Like if a Bile Titan is bearing down on you and you crash into a wall. This is where gear shifting comes in. If you let go of the triggers and use the bumpers, you can quickly shift gears and use the opposite trigger and get going in a fraction of the time. With this, you can do stuff like this 180 move that I love to do. You reverse straight backwards, getting up to 30 plus kmh, letting go of reverse and turning in that order. Then, while turning around, you can shift twice and end up on drive, then punch it. It's an excellent way to get going if you can't drive forward and or you're facing away from the direction you want to go. A secondary reason you let go of reverse and then turn is because you turn better when not accelerating. There's more small situations you'll be using this in, but this is the easiest one to point to since I use it so frequently. I know this sounds very simple, but it took me tens of hours to probably begin using this, and it immediately upped my play as soon as I did. Next, the Handbrake. The Handbrake is a simple yet vital tool that you will be using a lot, but it's kinda hard to explain. When you use the Handbrake, you lock your back wheels, which allows for better turning whilst also slowing you down. This allows for hard turns while going at high speeds, turning around quickly from a stop, counter-steering to straighten out after you've been turned involuntarily, and a myriad of other situations. Unfortunately, this is yet another aspect where I'll have to ask you to practice and feel it out through experience. On a lower difficulty mission, in a city/megacity, just try going at high speeds into wide turns, so that you have leeway, and practice turning with the Handbrake. After getting the hang of it, go for tighter turns, and once you have a solid handle on that, then you can translate it to the off-road. Generally, if you don't think you can make a turn at high speeds, then use the Handbrake for about half a second, and then counter-steer to straighten up. One last thing to mention is if you're holding the Handbrake while you aren't turning in either direction, and you're going at a decent speed, then you'll lurch in one direction or another, usually resulting in a 180. Bear this in mind when we get to the next subsection. Next, neutral parking in Gear 1. After getting down gear shifting, at least at a basic level, then you have access to a few new tools. One is widely applicable: neutral parking. If you set the gear to neutral and press and hold the Handbrake, then the car will park itself, even on hills. This means you can drive by a base, neutral park, and stop on a dime, allowing for stratagem throwing or shooting with precision. You can also get out after neutral parking and the car will still park itself. just bear in mind, if you're going fast enough and you do this, it'll still do that 180 thing. This can sometimes be used to give you the momentum from the 180, flinging you forward, or it'll just hit you and you'll ragdoll. In short, it just makes parking easier. The same rules with basic parking should still be applied, but it's faster and more consistent, so you'll likely adopt it quickly. The other more niche thing is drive 1. When you get used to using regular drive, you'll use drive 1 a lot less, but it'll still come up consistently in a few situations. As mentioned before, if you lose one back wheel, then shifting to drive 1 will hurt your speed, but it'll make you more able to drive straight and generally control the vehicle. Speaking of control, if you're going at a high speed in drive but want tighter control when turning, then you can shift to drive 1 while maintaining your speed. Another situation it's useful in is if you hit ice while being in drive, you'll slip all over the place. Drive 1 allows you to drive forward and it stays mostly stable. After hitting a certain speed, it'll begin slipping in a direction, but you can counter this by countersteering. Just turn against the slide, and if it's a bad enough of a slip, then you can use the handbrake to add drastically to your countersteer. Just don't countersteer too hard. Once you're off the ice, then you can switch back to drive. Generally, I'd say ice is, just like regular driving, something you'll have to learn through experience, but this should give you a head start. Yet another situation Drive 1 helps with is if you're going up a hill. Drive 1 offers better grip and torque than Drive, so you'll have an easier time climbing all but the steepest of hills, as long as you have a bit of speed going into it. And lastly, while in deep water, Drive 1 offers you far better grip and should help you get out if it's salvageable at all. Next, combat driving. The idea is simple. You can switch seats, even as the driver, and you can shoot/throw stratagems, then switch back to the driver's seat and keep driving. This is huge if you can master it. Say you're on a Blitz mission. Your team goes to one half of the map and you go the other way solo. You can very easily clear half the map alone. Here's a quick example.
Marking extraction point.
Pelican 1 preparing to depart. Shuttle launch in 20 seconds. Extraction complete. Pelican 1 beginning ascent.
Victory was never in doubt.
The thing is, this requires you to be great at the game's fundamentals, as well as being able to consistently drive well. It's essentially asking you to perform both roles at once, which is why I went over the other advanced stuff before this, and had the test include testing your game fundamentals. It is the master skill that will make the car the cornerstone of your playstyle, but there are some restrictions. First, you need to be good at basic mechanics, obviously, like aiming, shooting, and stratagem inputs while under pressure. You also have to be already good at driving, or else you'll have a high likelihood of something going wrong. The more complicated the machine, the more likely it is to fail. Because any individual part being screwed up will cause a cascading failure. Bad at driving, you won't get to do it at all. Bad at basic mechanics, it will take you longer to do your stuff and enemies will catch up and wreck the car. Fail to buy enough time for switching, enemies will catch up and wreck the car. Fail to use passenger fundamentals, you'll do damage to the car / shoot your teammates, causing a host of other issues. Drop a stratagem without a proper escape route, boom, 7-minute cooldown. Now there are other issues that can happen even when you don't fail. If you're with people you don't know, then you either shouldn't do this with them in the car or make sure wherever they're actively shooting is away from the passenger seat for long enough for you to do your thing. Because if you, the driver, get shot in the back of the head, then they are dead in the water, and most of the time it'll take them a bit to call you in. In that time, they likely won't abandon the car, causing any enemies around to target the car while it's going slow. Most of the time, this turns into a dead car. Also, if someone's in the front passenger seat, you can't do it at all. Now, all of that sounds bad, but if you manage to overcome these issues, then you become a search and destroy machine. When the Illuminate were invading Super Earth, despite the sheer number of enemies, leviathans, and having a full team, I was destroying at least 70% of the ships in Repel Invasion Fleet missions alone. This is because I'm fast, can destroy the ships, and get away quickly, resulting in less enemies spawning from them, less damage to the car, so it lasts longer, meaning more damage can be done. Master this skill, and you'll be ready for some of the ugliest stuff the game has to offer. A quick addendum to this section though. A friend of mine recently found out that you can store stratagems in the car, even while driving. This means if you input a stratagem in safety, then you can switch back to the driver's seat and drive with it. This can allow you to very quickly switch to the passenger seat and throw it, then switch back and drive away. This minimizes the amount of time you need to buy to switch to the seat and do damage. There are a few snags I've found. If you type in the chat, then it cancels your stratagem. Another snag is if you're in the driver's seat and you die with one in your hand, and the car doesn't die with you, then you lose access to the stratagem for the rest of the mission. This is very rare to happen since it only happened to me once, but it does mean you have a risk-reward element that comes with this strat. Also, it's very possible that devs might remove this in the future since it's definitely unintended, much like switching to the driver's seat with a carryable. Next, car flipping. Sometimes you'll end up with a flipped car, regardless of your skill level, but you can save it if you use certain explosives correctly. I'll go over loadouts later, but to be brief, if you blow up the ground beside the car once it's flipped, you can flip it back upright. Sometimes you might flip it too much or too little depending on where you blow it up and with what option. There's many options to do this with, but the ones I'll put forward as the safest for the car are the Punisher Plasma, the Loyalist, the Eruptor, the Crossbow, and surprisingly enough, anti-tank weapons like the Quasar. I'll show some stats for all known options really quickly, and then I'll explain my recommendations. The Punisher Plasma is best for this since it does low damage to the car, and only does about half damage to yourself at point-blank range, if you misspace it. But it has no utility outside of flipping the car and low AoE damage on enemies. The Loyalist is the second best and what I usually use. Though it lacks almost all fall-off damage, has to be charged to full, and has higher damage than the Plasma Punisher. It's the secondary, so it frees up your primary for anything you may need, like the next weapon, the Eruptor. It has far higher damage than the other two weapons, but it can destroy enemy spawners and has heavy armor pen. The bright side is if you space it correctly, then you can hit it with the outer blast radius, minimizing damage to the car and yourself. Just bear in mind the shrapnel will likely also hit the car, doing damage regardless of spacing. The crossbow is similar to the Eruptor, but it does more direct damage rather than having shrapnel adding to the direct damage. The last one is anti-tank options, namely the Quasar. These only do 150 at medium armor pen, so it's only doing about 75 damage to the car if you hit it close. They also have a fairly small range for their AoE, so it's easy to dodge hitting the wheels. The cost is either having to reload, call in, or charge up the weapon to shoot, which is time the car is taking damage, so the low damage may get balanced out by the bleed out damage. Oh yeah, when the car is flipped, it's taking bleed out damage. So if it's already low HP, it won't last as long. And if it's at high HP, you have longer to try and save it. I highly recommend the Loyalist for this role since secondaries are generally utility anyways, and it frees up your primary. Where you need to shoot depends on the situation and the weapon, but generally just shoot as far away from the wheels as you can while still hitting the main body to try and flip it. Generally, the closer to the car you shoot, the more the car will flip. So you need to get a feel for where to shoot on your chosen option so you don't under or overflip the car. This is yet another thing that needs to be learned yourself, but since flipping is so common, you'll naturally get a feel for it very quickly.
Allied destroyer joining squadron, deploying Helldiver to combat zone.
You have to let it all go, Diver. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind. This is wall riding, aka power scaling. It's a somewhat niche tech that allows you to drive on and even scale walls with the car. Yes, you heard that right. Literal walls. The basics of this are somewhat simple. If you have a wall or a steep incline with something that acts as a ramp against it, then you can drive from the ground to the ramp onto the wall. This works based on a similar principle as turning at high speeds. You have momentum in the direction you are already going, and then when you turn, you get dragged in that direction until that momentum is burned up. Same thing with this. You keep your grip on the wall until all your momentum going into it is burned up. Then you lose traction. In short, the more speed you take into the ride, the longer you can stay on the wall before you lose grip. I think some minor form of this was intended by the devs for steep hills, but I don't think it accounted for all the walls and kinda steep angled rocks that you can do this on. With this tech in hand, you can do stuff like this. This tech is applicable on all natural extracts in some way, and I mean all of them, allowing you to get on top of rocks with things like the shield pack, so you can have high ground and have shields, instead of needing the jet or warp pack to get up there. Most main and side objectives in the game are also rideable/scalable in some way, which range from purely for flexing to absurdly useful. Just to bear in mind, most of the useful cases for this aren't spur-of-the-moment things. They're things you need to practice when you're not under pressure so you can pull it off instantly when you have no room for error. Once you learn how to identify potential wall rides, everywhere feels like a playground. But you need to contain yourself and not try to drive up every wall that looks scalable. Trust me, I know it's gonna be hard. In short, keep it in your back pocket. It's niche, but it's very fun and sometimes extremely useful.
I got Steve. It might just be rich for samples.
That's bastard.
Affirmative.
shooting it.
As a bit of an addendum to this part, there's a strat that's related to this, but is thus far unnamed. If you park your car beside a wall or a rock, and the thing you want to mount is short enough, then you can climb on your car, then climb on the wall to get to places that are normally inaccessible. Some wall rides can be substituted with this, and I recommend you do so. Work smarter, not harder, and all that. I must apologize, guys. I need to cut the teamwork section until the full release of the guide, because I haven't fully organized my thoughts on it, since it was a very late edition. Initially, this guide was solely about solo play, because most of the fundamentals and advanced stuff could easily be translated to team play, but I realized I should still talk about it. Especially since I've come into some direct experience with the very end of it teamwork I've lacked up until now. So, look out for the full guide, but until then, have a good one.